What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. The international break is almost over and I'm going to ease myself back into FPL content with a transfer tips video for game week 12, discussing some of the popular players being moved in and out of people's teams and talking about whether or not they are good moves or not. If you enjoyed the video and you're happy for FPL to be back, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and let's get into it. So let's start with Mazraoui of Man United. Only Virgil van Dijk has had more transfers in for defenders so far going into game week 12. And at 4.6 million, he could be a potential bargain. I think Man United have got a few fixtures you could play him in over the next 6 game weeks. So Ipswich away in 12, Everton at home in 13, Forest at home in 15, and Bournemouth at home in 17. The problem is, and I'm going to be saying this about Man United players all week, we're not quite sure which players are going to be preferred by Amorim. Now, I tweeted this morning, or I quote tweeted, someone who had watched a training video of Man United, and he is setting up in the 4-2-1, so it is going to be his favoured formation. Who are going to be the preferred wing-backs? I just don't know. And I think at 4.6, Mazraoui is really good value, and I think technically he probably is better than Dalot, but we don't know which of the two is going to be preferred as the right wing-back. And then they could play, whoever doesn't play as the right wing back could play as the left wing back. I just don't see it. I just think he'll play a left footer. Like Luke Shaw and Malacia are back in training. They're probably not fully fit yet, but they provide competition. And in the training setup, it was actually Anthony as the right wing back and Malacia as the left wing back. Now, I wouldn't put too much stock into that because lots of players are away on international duty. And even if they're back, they've probably been given a little bit of extra time off before they get back into full club training. But it does show that he might be looking at playing a winger in one of those wing-back positions. A lot of people have said that it could be kind of Garnacho as a left wing-back and then Dalot or Mazraoui as the right wing-back. If I had to guess, I think Mazraoui will be in that 11, but there is no way I can be confident in that because I think Dalot will get kind of significant minutes. Now, at 4.6 million, you could maybe argue that it's worth the risk, but I don't know if it is. Because 2 of the next 5, you just ain't getting a clean sheet, right? Against Arsenal away and Man City away. And then you've got 3 pretty good fixtures outside of that, but you can't even guarantee that he's going to be starting. And Amorim's got a lot of work to do, and it's a completely new setup as well. There's going to be a bit of a transition period. I just think for that money, there is a bunch of other options. So if you are looking to spend around 4.6 million, you can probably pick someone up that's got a bit more security when it comes to starts and minutes. One player that's pretty popular this week is Lewis Hall, who's gone from 4.3 to 4.4 million, but that's still a pretty good price, and the fixtures are good for Newcastle. Now, I wouldn't sit here and say that Lewis Hall is 100% nailed on, because we have seen some games earlier on this season, like in game weeks 2 and 3, where he didn't start, but he has started the majority of games. We've had 11 matches so far, and he started in 8 of them. We know he can be attacking. He's playing for England now as well, and done well. I think that just reinforces his position there. And the only real competition is Lloyd Kelly, because Dan Burn is playing centre-back at the moment. Even if Trippier gets back fit and becomes the starting right-back, I wouldn't expect Livramento to go and play left-back anymore. I think Eddie Howe trusts Lewis Hall. So I think his minutes will be pretty good. And they've got a bunch of fixtures you could play him in coming up. So West Ham at home in 12, Palace away in 13 are good. Leicester at home in 16, Ipswich away in 17, even Brentford away in 15. I mean, if we've got Mbeumo still at that point, I suspect we'll be hoping for returns in that game. But if you had to play him, it really wouldn't be that bad. Then Villa at home, Man United away, and Spurs away is a little bit tougher. But then you run into Wolves at home, Bournemouth at home, Southampton away, and Fulham at home. And this is a cheap defender, right? So at times, you're just going to bench them in more difficult fixtures. So I really like Lewis Hall. I think if you haven't got 8 Nuri yet, he's only 0.1 million more. He's probably going to be just as attacking as Mazraoui, but we know he's absolutely nailed on, and the fixtures coming up are pretty good. I don't expect clean sheets necessarily against Fulham away or Bournemouth at home, but after that, the next 4 are quite good for both clean sheets and attacking potential. Wolves' defence is not that great, but again, you're looking at picking up a Man United defender that you don't even know is going to start. And then maybe someone like Luca Dean as well. I mean, he's started all 11 games so far. I really find it difficult to believe that Maatsen won't play soon, especially when they've got like midweek turnaround. So game week 14 is that midweek game week I've been talking about for a little while. Could Maatsen play against Brentford at home or maybe Southampton at home to give Luca Dean a bit of a rest? Possibly, but he has started every game and he has been pretty attacking as well. He's already got 3 assists in those first 11. So I don't hate Luca Dean as an FPL pick right now. I think he's also done pretty well for France during the break from what I saw on Twitter. We've just been here so many times before. As soon as he becomes an FPL pick, something goes wrong. He gets a red card, he gets an early sub, he gets injured. Just something always happens, or Matson will come in. You just know it if you've been playing FPL for a while. But in theory, he looks like quite a good pick right now. But I think for a lot of people, it's going to be Ain't Nuri if you don't own, or Lewis Hall. Just really quickly on other options, I quite like someone like Van Heck at Brighton. I don't think Bournemouth away is necessarily the best fixture to bring him in for. But after that, the fixtures are very good. And Levi Colwill has been seen training for Chelsea, which I don't think is a surprise. I'm not sure it was a massive thing that was keeping him out of the England squad. But Chelsea have got lots of fixtures you can play him in for a long time. He's a very boring pick, not going to get you a huge amount of attacking returns, but I think Chelsea have got the fixtures to start picking up some clean sheets. So it doesn't pain me, but I don't like sitting here and talking people out of Man United players. But I just think I get the temptation, 4.6 million for what he could possibly deliver from an attacking sense, and maybe Man United will improve defensively as well under Amorim. I get it. I just think I would go for a safer pick right now. So let's talk about Erling Haaland next. Now, we have discussed him quite a bit over the last few game weeks, but he's such a big and important FPL pick that I think he's worth talking about again. And his overall ownership is still pretty high at 63.7%, despite the fact he's had another 270,000 transfers out this week. Now, should you be selling him? I think right now, he is not delivering on that price, right? Everybody can see that. The output is just not there. Over the last 3 games, he does have 2 goals, which isn't too bad. There's been no bonus points there, so it's scores of 6, 2, and 5, which is not great, right? You want those 9+ scores. And 2 goals in 3 games sounds okay, but actually it's 2 goals in 6 games, which doesn't sound so great. So there's every reason, I think, to sell him. And I can't sit here and say that I think it's a bad decision, because I did it in Game Week 10 myself. It's gone really well, and I've got no intentions to bring him back anytime soon. And it's not because I think he won't score goals, because of course he will. He's going to get a brace or hat-trick sooner rather than later. I just think the money spent overall is better in a non-Haaland team. And in Salah and Cole Palmer, you've got a viable captaincy option every single week for the foreseeable future. So I wouldn't begrudge is the wrong word, right? I wouldn't argue against people that are selling him. But I will say this, right? To play devil's advocate a little bit, and obviously we can wait for press conference information before you make any moves. He's potentially about to play a Spurs team with no Romero and no Van de Ven. So Romero went away and played on international duty, then had to come off with a bit of an injury. I think it was a toe injury. And Van de Ven was already injured before the international break. Now, originally, Postecoglou said that he would be back afterwards, but he didn't necessarily make it sound like he would definitely be back for Game Week 12. It's a bit like Eze, right? He'll be back after the international break, but not necessarily straight away. And Ange is very open. So if he tells us on Friday that Van de Ven and Romero are not available, that means Haaland's up against Dragusin and Ben Davies, right? They're good players, but they're not Romero and Van de Ven, and Haaland could have a field day. And I actually think that over the next kind of 6-7 weeks, there's plenty of game weeks where Haaland versus Palmer versus Salah for captaincy is quite close. And you could say it's the same this week, right? Palmer's got Leicester away, Salah's got Southampton away. They're really good options. But Haaland at home against a defence possibly without their 2 centre-backs, that could be a big score. So I think there's every reason to want to keep him for Game Week 12. But if you're looking at your squad thinking, well, I want to sell him for someone cheap like João Pedro, and then I can get Salah in, and I've got more money to spend elsewhere, I think you should definitely consider doing it. All I can say is, right, it's never going to be easy to sell him. Like, you're going to have this every single week. This could be the week that he gets a brace or a hat-trick. I had exactly the same decision in Game Week 10. And I'll also tell you, it's not very fun watching Man City games anymore without Haaland, because you know the damage he can do. You know how highly owned he is. But we've seen how many people have done well already this season without him. I sold him in Game Week 10. I've had 2 big green arrows. Now, that's partly because Salah captaincies happen to do so well at the same time I sold Haaland. That won't always happen. But I am pretty confident that over 6 to 8 weeks, I will do better with Haaland than with him. That has to be my hope, right? Even if he scores a few hat-tricks along the way, I think it will probably even out. Because if Haaland scores a hat-trick, it's not like Palmer and Salah are definitely going to blank. And then you would hope that the extra money you've had to spend in other positions will win out. Now, my team's not a great one to look at right now because I put a lot of, I put a lot of my money into defence, like Raya, Gabriel. They've not kept clean sheets. Trent is injured as well. But if Arsenal start getting those clean sheets, and I've got Salah, and I've got Bruno, and I've got Palmer, still got Solanke up front for the good fixtures later on, I think no Haaland wins out still. Like if I was wildcarding this week, I definitely wouldn't have Haaland, 100%. But it is difficult to sell him. If you're not going to do it this week, I guess game week 13, Liverpool away, is not a bad time to do it. But game week 14, the City fixtures start getting a bit better. So the longer you leave it, the harder you're going to find to do it. And like I said, it's never going to be easy. And it ain't going to be fun watching Man City games. So, yeah, you have to decide whether you're ready to go through with it. And as I've said before, once you do it, it's got to be for a good amount of game weeks. You can't constantly be switching Haaland around and spreading that money and then reversing it all. It's just too many transfers. You're going to have other stuff to deal with. So I think it's perfectly fine to keep him this week. I think it's a good fixture. Even if Van der Ven and Romero are back, City will still get chances. We know how Postecoglou is going to play that game. But if they're out, I think it becomes even harder to sell this week. So one cheap defender that I didn't mention earlier was Anthony Robinson for Fulham, who's 4.7 million and had just over 70,000 transfers in this week. Now, I don't think it's wrong to be looking at a Fulham defender, but the only way I would probably pick them this week is if I was on wildcard. Because Wolves at home in 12 is a good fixture, but the next 4 are pretty rough for clean sheets. You got Spurs away in 13, followed by Brighton at home, Arsenal at home, Liverpool away. I don't see a clean sheet in any of those games. Now, from 17 onwards, the fixtures are pretty good again. So you've got Southampton at home in 17. Okay, Chelsea away in 18 is not great, but then it's Bournemouth at home, Ipswich at home, West Ham away, Leicester away. You'd be happy enough playing a Fulham defender in all of those games. And on wildcard, it's fine because you can set up your defence to cover these rough fixtures between 13 to 16. But if you're just using a transfer, the rest of your defence would have to look pretty good to cover those fixtures. And if you've got a few injuries and you're scraping or trying to scrape together like 3 good defenders to play every week, it doesn't make much sense to bring in a Fulham one that's got 4 really bad fixtures in the next 5, 4 clean sheets. So Wolves at home good, after that pretty bad. And of course you could say, well, I'm going to bring in Robinson this week and then in game week 13 I'll make a different defender transfer. But other stuff could come up, right? A midfielder or a forward could get injured and you might have to deal with that instead. It's probably not going to be worth a hit to bring in a defender. So I would just get someone that covers the next 4 to 5 game weeks better, like Lewis Hall, Colwill, Van Heck, or someone like that. I just wouldn't be buying a Fulham defender. Also, I'm not sure I would spend 4.7 on Robinson. Like he's fairly attacking, and I think he has got a good few attacking returns already. I know he has because I got a couple earlier this season. Yeah, he's got 3 attacking returns, but he's putting up like 0.1 expected assists per 90. Like, it's not bad, and he does always play 90 minutes, but it's nothing to get massively excited about, I would say. So I probably wouldn't spend 4.7 on Robinson. I'd rather just spend 4.3 on Anderson and just save 0.4 million. And this guy's got goal threat as well. I know he's not scored this season, but 2 goals last year, 1 the season before. Like, he will get you the odd goal every now and again, and he saves a bit of money. Now, it might feel right now, especially if you've sold Haaland, that money's not tight. But money always becomes a factor at some point during the season. I just don't think that Robinson is worth the 0.4 over Anderson. So I probably wouldn't buy a Fulham defender with a transfer, maybe on wildcard. And if I was doing it, I wouldn't go for Robinson. I think I'd go for Anderson instead. So sticking to Fulham, it's a similar conversation for Emil Smith-Rowe. Is now the right time to be buying a Fulham attacker? Now, to be fair, the fixtures aren't quite so bad for an attacker versus a defender because you're not as worried about the clean sheets. So having to play Smith-Rowe against Spurs away in 13 and Brighton at home in 14 is not the end of the world, right? And if he's an 8th attacker, you can maybe even bench him against Arsenal and Liverpool. So I don't hate the idea of bringing him in. I think his stats are pretty good. The minutes are decent as well. But I just think I'd rather go for someone with a better fixture run, despite how good he's done so far this season. I think people are reacting a little bit to the fact he just got an 11-pointer. Like, he's done well this season, right? 10 starts, there's been 11 game weeks, 3 goals, 2 assists. It's a decent number of returns. But I just think for 5.7 million, why would you not just go and buy Semenyo instead? Now, he's yellow flagged at the moment, right? I get it, but I suspect that's just another international break injury, and he'll probably be fine. But the fixture run's just a bit better. Brighton at home, Wolves away, Spurs at home rather than away, Ipswich away, West Ham at home. But the next 5 game weeks just look better than they do for Fulham. The only thing I will say is Semenyo is on 4 yellow cards. And if he went and got that before, let's say he gets the yellow against Spurs and misses Ipswich, that would hurt a little bit. Like, it wouldn't be ideal. But I just think the fixture run for Bournemouth is so good for so long. I'd rather just probably pick Semenyo up rather than Smith Rowe. I guess you would have to have a look at the rest of your squad and decide how many other risks you've got there. Like, if you've already got a bunch of players that are close to a suspension or are not necessarily nailed on and you know you're going to have to use transfers on them soon, then maybe it is just safer to get Smith Rowe, because I think his current yellow card situation is not quite so bad, although I should double check that. Where is he? He's here. He's had 1 yellow card. So he's miles away from a suspension. So if your squad is looking a bit fragile, maybe I would just ignore the fixtures and get Smith Rowe. If you're looking pretty set and you haven't got a huge amount of concerns in your team, I think with the fixtures coming up, I'd much rather have Semenyo than Smith Rowe. Not to say that Smith Rowe is a bad option. If you've bought him in, fair play, he's a good pick. But I think I just prefer Semenyo for the same price. So just over 100,000 FPL managers have brought in Chris Wood this week. And I don't say this very often about FPL picks because I like to provide both sides of the argument. But I think in this case, it is a mistake to buy him. Like, the boat has basically been missed. Or more to the point, the window to buy Chris Wood has gone. Like, even in game week 11, with Arsenal away and City away in the next 4 game weeks, I didn't hate him as a transfer in because he had Newcastle at home in 11, Ipswich at home in 13, and lots of people have got players like Morgan Rogers that they could play in game week 12 instead. But if you're buying this week, you're buying him before Arsenal away, which is a tough fixture. Like, I do rate that defence. I think they will start getting clean sheets again soon. And then in 14, it's City away. And no matter what you think about that Man City team right now, that is still a difficult fixture. And then after that, you could say the fixtures are okay. But even Man United away in 15, we don't know how difficult that will be. We don't know how much Amorim will improve that side and how quickly he will do it. It might be that you get to 15 and it's not a great fixture. 16 onwards, maybe not quite so bad. But then you've got 3 tough fixtures in the next 4. I just don't think it makes any sense to buy him, despite how many goals he's got this season. And by the way, I think he scored a hat-trick or something while he was away on international duty. So he's in great form right now. I think anyone that owns him, especially if they've owned him since 6 million or something like that, they're probably keeping him, right? They are just going to play a different attacker this week and then playing for Ipswich at home, which makes a lot of sense. But buying him, even on wildcard, I just don't really get it. Like, after United away, it's Villa at home, Brentford away, Spurs at home, Everton away, Wolves away. It's not bad fixtures, but you're waiting like 5 game weeks to get to them. I think it's a mistake. I think we've missed the boat. Do I wish I bought him in earlier? Of course. And I've said, by the way, plenty of times before people tell me in the comments that I'm just getting this wrong. I've said plenty of times he's a good pick, right? And you should keep him or you should bring him in. It makes a lot of sense, but not now. Not before Arsenal away. I would just ignore him and go elsewhere. João Pedro, if Hertzler says that he's still fully fit or getting back to fitness, then he's a good transfer in. I think otherwise, for cheap defenders, you're probably still looking at like Cunha, maybe for Wolves. There probably is someone I'm missing. Obviously, if you've got the money, you can go up to like Isak. Vissa's not bad for the next 2. The only thing I will say with Vissa is after Everton away, Leicester at home, the fixtures do get a bit tougher, so I'm not sure now is the right time to buy him either. And by the way, with the yellow flag, again, I think he's probably just an international break injury and he'll be fine. Otherwise, you've got Evan Nielsen, who has been benched once this season but regularly starts. The fixtures are pretty good. Or obviously Danny Welbeck if you don't want João Pedro. None of those forwards I've just mentioned have Arsenal, City and United away in the next 4. I just think it makes more sense to get them instead of Chris Wood. You can always buy Chris Wood later on. So Pedro Porro's had nearly 100,000 transfers out this week, and it's hard to sit here and find an argument as to why you should keep hold of him. Because at 5.5 million, he's not as expensive as like a Vardy or a Van Dijk or Trent, but he's not super cheap either. I think we're at a stage of this season where a lot of FPL managers want to reduce the amount of money in defence and put that into attack instead. And 5.5 million becomes a bit harder to justify. You've got Man City away right in front of you, so it's hard to foresee any returns in that game. And the clean sheets just haven't been there in general. Like, Porro started 11 times this year so far, 2 clean sheets. And if you're not going to get clean sheets, you want the attacking returns for 5.5 million. And he's only got 1 goal, 1 assist all season. Like, it's not great. I mean, you could frame that as 4 returns in 11 games, but is that enough for 5.5 taking up a defender spot? I'm not sure it is. And you can look at the underlying numbers, to try and predict if those attacking returns are coming. And I would say that Porro's numbers are fine, but they are down on previous seasons, like 0.06 XG per 90, 0.13 expected assists. They're not bad numbers whatsoever, but I think for that kind of money, you would expect more. So I think it's fully justified if you want to sell him. Like, even if you look after Man City away, Fulham at home, maybe Spurs could keep a clean sheet if Romero and Van der Ven are back. I think the Fulham attack is pretty good, but it is an away game for them. Maybe Spurs get a clean sheet there. I wouldn't put too much of my own money on it, though. Bournemouth away, difficult. Chelsea at home, difficult. Southampton away, maybe. And then Liverpool at home in 17, difficult. So you've got 1, maybe 2 games over the next 6 where you're hoping for a clean sheet. And if you don't get them, you want the attacking returns. And they just haven't been there. I think it's quite hard to justify Porro as a 5.5 million option right now. No one's bringing him in, that's for sure. The only argument I could maybe make is minutes. That's one thing you get from him. When he's fit, he starts and he plays 90 minutes every single game. And that can be useful when you've got a congested fixture period. So we talked a lot about game week 14 being a midweek game week. You know Porro's going to play against Fulham and Bournemouth. Then he'll be back in the side for Chelsea and he'll play against Southampton. That could be nice. And maybe you've got other fires to put out in your squad right now, and therefore Porro is not your top priority. In that case, I wouldn't force him out. I wouldn't start taking hits. He's not that bad as an FPL pick. But that's really the only scenario. If you're sitting there with not much else to do and you want to free up funds for another move, then I think Porro out is fine. I talked actually about maybe bringing him in myself in game week 11. I didn't go through with that. And I'm quite glad right now because I'd have extra money in my defence for 1 assist against Ipswich, but they conceded again. With City away now, poor fixtures coming up. It's just not looking great. So let's stick to Spurs and talk about Brennan Johnson next, who's had just over 100,000 transfers out this week. Now, I would be in less of a rush to sell him than I would be with Porro. I still see City away as a difficult fixture, but they're not coping that well at the moment defensively, especially on transition. And Spurs have the players to cause them problems. We know how good that Spurs attack is. Brennan Johnson has very little competition for his place right now. He's starting every game, 80 to 90 minutes each time. And the numbers look good, right? 0.55 XG per 90 is pretty nice. And his actual returns are decent as well. So far this season, he's had 4 goals, 2 assists, and he started 10 times. It's not bad for a player that costs 6.8 million. And some of you probably got him cheaper than that as well. And remember, we're coming at this from the angle that you already own him. Like, if you don't have him, you're not bringing him in before City away, right? It doesn't really make much sense. But if you already own him, I'm not sure he's a massive priority to sell. As always, it's going to be team dependent. If you've got nothing else to worry about and the money to go up to Bruno Fernandes or someone like that, fair enough. Or if you want to downgrade Johnson to like a Semenyo or Smith Rowe to have money to spend elsewhere for another move, again, fair enough. But generally, I think it's probably okay to hold on to him. And after that City game, Fulham at home, Bournemouth away, Chelsea at home, Southampton away, just doesn't look as bad as it does for a defender. So I still think at that price, he's one of the best options going forward. Like, if money was no issue, I'd probably rather have him than like a Smith Rowe or a Semenyo. I think with Bournemouth's fixtures, maybe it's quite close to Semenyo. But if I had Johnson, I probably just wouldn't use a transfer. And I certainly wouldn't move to someone like Garnacho because you don't even know if he's going to play moving forward or how good his minutes will be. I think outside of that, unless there's someone I'm missing, I just don't think there's many great options like 6.9 or below. And no one's buying McNeil right now. Mazraoui, look, Chelsea's fixtures going forward are really good. That's why most of us want to own Palmer. And if we don't, we're going to bring him in soon, right? So we get that. But who knows at some point if Neto doesn't start right wing? I mean, it seems unlikely because Mazraoui started, every game since game week 1. I don't know. I just don't like the Chelsea attacker minutes outside of Jackson and Palmer. Like Harvey Barnes, you just can't buy him because as well as he's done this year, and he's got 4 goals, 1 assist, you just don't know if he's going to start. Martinelli, I don't think people are going there. There's just not Rodgers. But then if you're going cheap, you probably go Semenyo. like Kovacic, Kulusevski, Damsgaard. These are not players you're bringing in. So, fair enough if you've got the luxury of selling Brendan Johnson, you've got no other issues to deal with. Happy days. I wish I was in that position. But I actually still like him going forward. Like, it's frustrating that he's blanked against Ipswich. Don't get me wrong. We all expected a lot of goals for Spurs in that game. But they're still going to score plenty moving forward. And one of their attackers that starts every game at the moment with very little competition is Brendan Johnson. I still like that price. So let's talk about an Arsenal attacker next. Not Bukayo Saka, because I think he'll come up in conversation quite a bit in the rest of the videos I've got planned this week. But instead, Kai Havertz. Listed as a forward, as we know, costs 8 million. Is there any justification for bringing him in? And if not, is there any justification for holding on to him if you've already got him? Now, I do quite like the fixtures that Arsenal have moving forward. I'm not saying all these games are super easy, but on paper, Forest at home, West Ham away, United at home, Fulham away, Everton at home, next 5 is pretty good. And it's also much better than what Arsenal have had for most of this season so far. Like, they've already had to play Villa away, Brighton at home, Spurs away, City away, Bournemouth away, Liverpool at home, Newcastle away, and Chelsea away. So they've got most of the difficult fixtures out of the way already. And it's kind of plain sailing from here for quite a while. And if you look at the games that Havertz has returned in, okay, it's only 4 goals, 1 assist, in 11 starts, so 5 returns. There's other attackers that have matched that or done better for cheaper. But when you look at the games he's returned in, it's the easier one. So Wolves at home, Brighton at home, Leicester at home, and Southampton at home as well. So I'm not going to go down the route of he only gets returns at home. I don't think that's the case. I just think that Arsenal have had lots of tricky away fixtures. Like basically Villa, Spurs, City, Bournemouth, Newcastle and Chelsea. It's not an easy run. So I think going forward, we should expect more returns from Havertz. And I love the fact that he always plays 90 minutes every single game. Right? He's always in that 11. You never have to worry about him. And that can be useful over December. So I think what Havertz offers in isolation is actually pretty good. And I think the amount of returns he will get will go up, right, over the next few weeks. Is there any justification to bring him in, though? That's more difficult because for 0.5 million more, you've got someone like Isak who's just as nailed on and on penalties and has better fixtures coming up. So if you've only got 8 to spend, okay, maybe then you can go for Havertz if you're happy enough to block double Arsenal defence or you don't want to go for Saka or something like that. But if you've got the 0.5, you've got to buy Isak, I think, instead. So it's hard to justify bringing him in. In terms of whether you should keep him, as ever, right, that is going to come down to what the rest of your team looks like. If you've got other issues to deal with, I don't see any pressing need to get rid of Havertz. I think Forest at home, West Ham away is perfectly fine next to. And the Man United game is the midweek fixture, so you know he's going to start. If the rest of your team looks great, and you want to upgrade into an Isak, or you want to downgrade to a cheap forward to put that money into midfield, then fair enough. But I think we will see, I don't want to say a different Havertz, because I think he has done all right so far this season, like 5 returns and 11 starts. But I think the amount of returns he gets over the next 6 will be better than what he's had in the last 6, just simply because the fixtures are getting better. And also, okay, they're currently flagged, but I'm expecting Rice and Saka to be fine for game week 12. Odegaard is back as well now. Arsenal have pretty much their first choice 11 available. That can only help their attackers. I think Havertz will get more chances. So I think he'll do well. I've got no plans to buy him personally, but if you've already got him, there might be some reason to keep hold of him. If you enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button. Rate 5 stars if you're listening on podcast. I'll be back tomorrow with the game week preview, team selection on Thursday, final thoughts on Friday, and deadline stream on Saturday. It's good to be back. That is the last break until January now. So thank you very much for watching. Plenty of content to come. I'll catch you again tomorrow.